Welcome back to Taj's Garden. I'm the garden realtor. Today we're going to be tackling fertilizers. What are they? Why do we need them? Organic or synthetic? All the things. As you all know from my last video, I am an organic gardener, so I tend to choose organic fertilizers, which would be things like worm castings, this tomato and veg liquid fertilizer, which would be like an all-purpose fertilizer. You could use it for all your plants. Fish and seaweed liquid fertilizer. I am not being sponsored by any of these products. These are products that I purchased with my own money, and I've been purchasing these for years. And these actually work wonders for me. These are just a few that I just stocked back up on. And these are one of a few of my favorites. Let's talk about what to look at when you are looking for your fertilizers. Now, when you are looking for fertilizers, you're going to want to look at the NPK. If you remember in biology, on the periodic table, the N stands for nitrogen, the P stands for phosphorus, and the K stands for potassium. So every one of these play different roles. The N, which is nitrogen, is going to boost the leafy growth in your plants. Some plants are going to thrive on nitrogen for the duration of its life, and other plants are not going to need it later on. And I'll explain more about that in a few minutes. So things like kale, spinach, lettuce, collard greens, all of your vegetables that you are growing for the leafy growth are going to thrive with nitrogen for the duration of its life. Phosphorus is good for your roots, flowers, fruits. Phosphorus is going to be the best for vegetables that you eat solely for its roots, like carrots, and fruiting vegetables like tomatoes. The tomato plant is using phosphorus in order to help it develop those flowers. If it is low on phosphorus, you're not going to see very many flowers on the tomato plant, and less flowers mean less fruit. So if you want a lot of fruits, you're going to want to make sure that your tomato is not low on phosphorus. If your tomato plant has a lot of leafy growth and it doesn't have any flowers or very little flowers, you start to feel concerned because it's around the time that it should be producing tomatoes. Chances are you are giving your tomato plant too much nitrogen and not enough phosphorus. So that's a sign. Next is the K, which is potassium. The potassium is good for the overall immune system of the plant. Just like you and me, the plants also have an immune system. The immune system is what helps it fight against diseases, pests, and stress. And all three of these go together. For example, if you were to transplant your plants into the garden, and let's say it's just really windy, sometimes that can stress the plants out because they aren't used to that amount of wind. And when plants are stressed out, they send off a hormone, and certain pests can sense that hormone and they'll attack your plant. So if that immune system isn't strong, then those pests can damage your plant to the point of no return. So when your plants are young, you don't need high numbers when it comes to fertilizing. As you can see, 2, 3, 1. This is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Also want to make sure that the numbers are not too far apart from each other, because if they get a huge boost of something and not enough of another thing, that could set them up for failure later on. Deficiency weed fertilizer is primarily used for the nitrogen aspect of it. As we can see, the middle number, which is phosphorus, is 1 point higher than the nitrogen, which is fine, is completely fine. However, we do use this for nitrogen. Another thing that we use for nitrogen are earthworm castings. Not only are these worm castings really good for nitrogen, which we went over, that nitrogen is really good for leafy growth on your plants that you are growing primarily for its leafy growth, but it's also packed with phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, which makes it a well-rounded organic fertilizer. Aside from the fertilizer aspect, it is also really packed with microbial benefits. So you can use this as a soil amendment in the very beginning of your season to help the soil break down organic matter. This is going to improve your soil aeration, water retention, and drainage, which in turn benefits your plants by improving the root system and the plant growth. So not only can you use it for the amazing fertilizer side, you can also use it as a soil amendment, organic soil amendment. Now, let's talk about tomato and veg. Is a 2-4-2. Once your plants get to the size where they do not need as much nitrogen and they need a little bit of phosphorus, that is when I use this. So once my tomatoes start to show signs that they want to produce flowers, then I back off on the nitrogen and I give them this to help improve that flower growth. Because if you don't during this time, you will hardly see any flowers. You'll see a ton of leafy growth and you won't get any tomatoes. Remember, flowers equal tomatoes. And not only are we increasing the phosphorus, but we are also increasing potassium. And that is because once they get to the flowering side and start producing fruit, not only do they look beautiful to us, but they begin to become intriguing to pests and other animals. So you're going to want to make sure that your vegetable, your plant that you're growing is it has a really good immune system because it's going to have to fight it. You can't fight all of its battles. Now, these fertilizers being liquid, once you mix them with the water and you water your plants with these, your plants are going to immediately be able to take in these nutrients. However, there are also fertilizers which are called slow release fertilizers. Those are the granular fertilizers that you're going to amend into the soil and it's going to break down over time. Remember when we spoke about this being a great soil amendment? The plants are not going to immediately get this. It has to break down over time in the soil. So what is breaking these things down in the soil are going to be your microorganisms, such as bacteria and fungi. They are going to be breaking these granular fertilizers into a smaller, simpler form that the plants can absorb. So the microbial activity is what breaks down these granular fertilizers. And while it's breaking down slowly, the plants will be getting these fertilizers over time during a long span of time versus your plants getting the liquid fertilizer all at once right in that moment. The granular fertilizers will be broken down over time and feed your plants throughout this season. So now that we spoke about the NPK and I explained what N, P, and K stand for, what their purpose is, how they benefit your plants, let's talk about another reason why your plants could be losing its nutrients. When you have your plants in a pot or a bucket or raised beds, every time you water, the nutrients that your plants did not take up is being depleted. Some people don't really understand why we need to fertilize. So let me go a little deeper in that aspect. You can't compare a vegetable garden to a forest because a forest can sustain on its own. During the fall, you'll see that the leaves have fallen and it acts as a mulch around the base of the tree. And once those leaves break down, nitrogen is going to go right to the roots to help those trees produce those leaves at the beginning of the season. Now, a vegetable garden is not in its natural habitat. Every plant that you are growing has come from a different region. So that is why a vegetable garden cannot sustain on its own. Not only are these plants not in its natural habitat, but these seeds have also been engineered to withstand certain diseases or to withstand certain pests. For example, this Roma VF tomato I grew last season is engineered to resist Alternarium, Fusarium, and Verticillium, which are all fungus diseases that attack tomato plants. And these happen to be fungus diseases that a lot of tomato growers struggle with because they attack the leaves. If the leaves are attacked and they aren't able to photosynthesize, then it's gone. I think this is the only vegetable seed that I have that's actually engineered to resist something. I purchased these seeds last year and it came with a ton of seeds, and that was one of them. And when I did my research on it, I thought, that's interesting. Let me see how it works. And I actually didn't have any issues at all season growing my tomatoes. I had a ton of Roma tomatoes and they were delicious. Now let's talk about synthetic fertilizers. I don't use synthetic fertilizers because they are man-made fertilizers and they tend to have higher numbers. So you'll see something like 20, 10, 10 or 46, 20, 10. It's just, in my opinion, too high for the plant. You will see a huge boost in growth. However, over time, the plant does become stressed and you end up having to use more of their products to help fight whatever you're having an issue with when it comes to your plant. So I watched a creator talk about his theory on these synthetic fertilizers and how those same companies that produce these synthetic fertilizers also have a ton of other products that are going to help against these diseases and other stuff that you're going to deal with when you're growing plants. As being an organic gardener, I compare plants to our bodies more than I probably should. When you're not feeling well, chances are you are low in a specific vitamin. So if your plant is not feeling well and it is showing signs of sickness, chances are it is low in a specific mineral. So that's how I garden. Another example, if your plants are showing signs of the leaves curling in, instead of going to get a certain type of chemical to spray on the plant to force it to open its leaves back up, most of the time they're closing their leaves in to let you know that they're getting too much sunlight or too much heat. So if you're growing in buckets, you can move them up by your porch towards the evening when the sun is harsh, or you can get 40% shade cloth and cover them in the evening or throughout the day if you would like. I know our summers are pretty harsh and sometimes our temperatures can get up to 110 to 120, and ooh, the plants don't really like it that much. Some plants thrive in that heat, like peppers. They actually do really like the heat, but when it gets that high, it can induce stress on your plants. So I tend to just really pay attention to what signs they are giving me because your plants can talk. Guys, your plants can talk. If you look in the description, I will have a link to the video that explains how your plants can talk to you. So yeah, your plants talk to you, and you will be an amazing gardener if you learn the lingo of your plants. I also want to mention that a sign that your plant is low on something would be yellowing leaves, droopiness. But in order to really determine it, you will have to assess the environment. You also need to look underneath the leaves to see if something is stressing it out. There could be little insects like aphids who hide underneath the leaves and they suck out the sap from the leaves, and that causes the leaves to curl outward. So that's also something. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments, and see you later.